Hey everyone, and welcome back to Whispering Image. Tonight's story comes from a viewer named Liam, who lives in a bustling city but found himself in an apartment where the past was just as real as the present. It's a terrifying account that reminds us that sometimes the things we use to feel safe can become a window into our deepest fears. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and let's get into it. This is the story of a new home, a new camera, and a terrifying secret that was always watching. Moving into my new apartment felt like a major upgrade. It was a beautiful, turn-of-the-century building in a trendy neighborhood in Boston, with high ceilings, exposed brick walls, and huge windows that overlooked a vibrant street. The place was old, sure, but the landlord had done a fantastic job of modernizing it without losing its character. The only thing I needed to do was add my own furniture and, as a tech guy, install a new smart security system. I got a top-of-the-line camera setup with motion sensors and live streaming to my phone. I placed the main camera on a bookshelf, giving it a wide shot of my living room and front door. It was the best way to keep an eye on things, especially since I worked late nights. It gave me a sense of control and safety, a feeling I hadn't had since my last apartment was broken into. The first few weeks were great. The camera sent me notifications of my mail being delivered, or a stray cat wandering onto my fire escape. Normal stuff. But then, the notifications started coming at odd hours. When I was at work or sleeping, I'd check the live feed, and it would show nothing. Just my empty apartment. I figured it was a glitch, or maybe a spider had gotten too close to the lens. I reset the system, but the phantom alerts continued. A few days later, I was at work when I got a notification that motion had been detected in my apartment. I pulled out my phone and watched the live feed. It was my living room, silent and empty, just as I'd left it. But something was off. I zoomed in on my bookshelf. My favorite book, a worn copy of The Haunting of Hill House, which I had left spine out, was now lying flat on the shelf. I shook my head, thinking I must have done it myself and forgotten. The next day, a chair I swore I had pushed in was a foot from the table. My keys, which I always left on the counter, were hanging on the doorknob. I started to get nervous. I checked the camera's recorded clips. All the motion detections showed the same thing: an empty room, and a few seconds later, an object had moved. The recordings were seamless, with no cuts or glitches. It was as if whatever was moving the objects was so fast, the camera couldn't even capture it. My initial thought was a technical issue, some kind of weird time-lapse glitch. Then, things escalated. One night, I was watching the live feed from my bed. I couldn't sleep. The silence of the old building was starting to feel heavy. The camera showed my living room. The light from a street lamp filtered through my blinds, casting long, striped shadows across the floor. As I watched, I saw it. A faint, dark figure. A man, standing in the living room. He was just a dark silhouette against the light, barely there. He was watching the front door. My blood ran cold. The figure stood there for a full minute, motionless. Then, as if it sensed my gaze, it turned its head slowly and faced the camera. There were no features, just a black void where its face should have been. But I felt it staring directly at me, through the phone in my hand, across the room. I screamed, dropping my phone on the floor. I didn't dare pick it up. I stayed awake all night with the lights on, convinced that the thing was still there, watching me. The next morning, I checked the camera feed again. The recorded clip showed nothing but an empty room, no figure, no shadow, no motion. It was as if it had never been there. The camera was playing tricks on me, or worse, my mind was. I considered getting rid of the camera, but my curiosity and a strange sense of obligation held me back. I was terrified, yes, but I also felt like I was witnessing something important, something that needed to be seen. I started leaving my laptop open with the camera feed on a second monitor while I was at work. I felt like a voyeur, a spectator to my own haunting. That's when I saw the second figure. It was a woman, a young woman with long dark hair, wearing a white dress. She was standing in the kitchen. She wasn't a shadow. She was as solid as I was, moving around the kitchen, humming a song I couldn't quite make out. It was a different kind of terror. This wasn't an empty, malevolent presence. This was a living, breathing person, doing normal things in my apartment. I watched her for hours, utterly captivated. She would do normal things. Cook, read a book on the couch, watch TV. But she was never there when I came home. I started to notice small details. The furniture in the feed was slightly different from mine. The coffee table was a different color. The sofa was slightly older. The kitchen counter was wood, not marble. I was watching someone else's life unfold in my apartment, but it was happening in the past. My camera wasn't just a live feed. It was a window into another time. The real horror began when I saw the other man. A well-built, handsome guy with a dark, menacing look in his eyes. He would show up at the apartment late at night, and the woman, whom I began to think of as Clara, would freeze in terror. They would argue in silent rage, the tension so thick I could almost feel it through the screen. He was abusive, controlling. The horror wasn't paranormal anymore. It was real, human malice. One night, the camera caught a terrible scene. He came home, drunk, and their argument escalated. He pushed her against the wall, then threw her to the floor. Clara was screaming, but there was no sound on the feed, just the silent, horrifying pantomime of violence. I watched, helpless, from my office desk. As he picked her up and dragged her into the bedroom, out of the camera's view, I waited, my heart pounding in my chest. Nothing. For a whole hour, nothing happened. Then, the man re-emerged, his face a mask of cold fury. He walked to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and walked back towards the bedroom. I knew what was coming. I couldn't just watch. I had to do something. I grabbed my keys and raced out of my office, a mix of panic and adrenaline coursing through my veins. As I fumbled with my keys at my apartment door, I saw a familiar shadow in my peripheral vision. I turned and froze. It was the man from the feed, the boyfriend. He was standing in the hall, just 10 feet away, a chillingly calm expression on his face. He didn't move. He just stared at me, a faint, translucent glow surrounding him. He was a ghost. He was the one who had been moving things, who had been watching me. But the real twist wasn't that he was the one haunting me. It was that he was waiting. He smiled, a cold, predatory smile. And then I saw something that made me scream. Behind him, standing a few feet back, was the figure of a younger man, his face gaunt with terror and his body translucent and barely visible. He was waving his arms, desperately trying to get my attention. He was staring at me. No, he was staring at himself. It was me, a future me, a ghostly version of me, trapped in the same apartment, a new victim in the same cycle of terror. The ghostly boyfriend walked towards me slowly. As he got closer, his face began to change. His eyes, now black voids, were filled with a chilling sense of familiarity. His expression was not one of rage, but of hunger. He was a parasite, feeding on the fear of the people who lived in this apartment. And he was the one who was waiting for me. I was meant to see what happened to Clara. I was meant to feel the terror. I was meant to be his next meal. The man's face began to contort and morph into something indescribably evil. It was a face I had seen before, a face that I was seeing right now. It was my own face. He wasn't the boyfriend. He was me. He was the future version of me, the one who had finally gone mad with terror and had been consumed by the parasitic haunting. I backed away, fumbling with my keys. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the key into the lock. I could hear the faint, desperate whispers of my future self, echoing in the hallway, as I had heard them from the ghostly Clara in the feed. The ghost of my future self was trying to warn me, to break the cycle. I finally got the door open, slammed it shut, and locked every lock. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the camera feed, and immediately deleted the app. I threw my phone across the room and huddled in a corner. The whispers were gone, but the terror was not. I was alone, and I was terrified. But I knew that I was no longer a spectator. I was a part of the story, and the camera was still watching. So, what would you do? Would you pack up and leave? Or would you try to fight back against a ghost that is both the past and your own future? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story gave you chills, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. And for more terrifying true stories, be sure to subscribe to Whispering Image and hit that notification bell. Until next time, try not to look too closely at the darkness in the corners of your home. You never know what's looking back.